Hi guys, welcome back to the Life's Good, and as promised I'm attempting to sort my pickled onions, or to be exact the shallots that I grew this year, which I'm using to make pickled onions. I'm just sampling a little bit of my latest brew. This is a festival beer kit, Landlord's Finest Ale. It's quite pale, but do you know what? It's absolutely lovely. I like it. It's a bit like a light IPA-ish, quite hoppy, a bit citrusy, but very refreshing. Cheers. Less about the beer. We're here because of these guys. I've already shown you growing the shallots, planting them, growing them, and lifting the shallots and drying them. Those processes have already been covered in previous videos. If you've missed those, I hope you haven't, but if you have, you need to pop back and have a look, and I show you in previous videos how to grow shallots and lift them and dry them to get to this stage. I've got all manner of bits and pieces here, guys. The shallots, obviously, I've dried these off over the last nearly 2 weeks, I guess, week or so, in the greenhouse, because the weather has been a bit damp. It has been raining on and off, and I thought it a bit. There's an aircraft going ahead. There always is. I've got the window open because it's quite warm in here. I've got the stove on. We're right on the flight path for Newcastle Airport, guys, so that's going to happen. I've dried them off in the greenhouse, so this is good. I've now got nice, dry, you can hear it, crispy shallots. I need to clean these up a bit now. So what I've been doing, or what I've started doing, is rubbing off all the loose bits, trimming off the roots, taking off any loose skin. And these long stemmy bits, you can see that one there, guys. I'm just snipping that off near the bottom with a pair of scissors. Any roots at the bottom I'm snipping off with my scissors, and there's a bit of loose there. I'm just rubbing off all the loose. Now sometimes you find a little bit of mould and sometimes a bit of dampness under the skin. Don't worry about that, you just rub it all back until you get to that sort of stage. So that shallot now is cleaned off. He's still a bit grubby on the outside, but you're going to be removing this outer skin. Alright guys, so what I'm doing is I'm getting them ready and I'm throwing them into my little colander here. And what I do is, once I've got enough, you need to start peeling, topping and tailing. But that's quite a fiddly job. It's quite difficult. And a tip I've picked up over the years is to use a pan of boiling water. Now I know we've just spent 2 weeks drying these chaps, but that's just to get them to this stage where you can take all the outers off. I've got a pan of boiling water. In fact, this is my pasta pan. If I just lift off the lid, it's quite warm. It's got boiling water in it. But in here, if you lift this bit, it's like a colander. It's quite hot, guys. I'm trying to lift it to show you. But if you can see, it's full of holes, that bit, and it sits in the boiling water in the pan. It is a pasta pan for cooking pasta, but you can use it for many other things. And I use it for this process. What I do is I get a few of these that are ready to start peeling, topping and tailing, and I will drop these into the boiling water just for a minute or two, not for long, and then lift them out of there straight into a sink of cold water. And then from the cold water you'll find you can rub off all the outer skins quite easily. They all just rub off easy, or they should, that's the plan. And as you rub them off, take all the outers off, you take off the bottom root section, take off the top tip, and you'll end up with a shallot that's ready to go to the next process. So that's the next stage. So dried shallots, clean them off, get them to this stage, drop them in the boiling water, plunge them in the cold water, rub off all the skins, top and tail, put them in a bowl or a dish or a colander or something, set them to one side, ready for the next stage. I've just brought you in close to these guys, just to show you what I've got here. You get an onion like that. It's got all sorts of loose skin and sometimes bits of dirt, all manner of bits on here. Rub off all the loose. This stem we don't want, so all I do is with my scissors cut that off. Okay, trim off the roots and bits at the bottom. Get off everything that's loose, just rub it all off. Get it back to the basic onion. I've still not cleaned and peeled enough, but that's where the boiling water process helps. Okay, so I've got it to that stage. I'll put that in my colander, waiting for more. There's another one. Just peel off all of the loose bits. Take off all that. Remove the roots. I'm just going to snip that bit off. There you go, another one ready. Just wanted to show you a bit closer up what I'm actually doing here, guys. The shallots have been boiled just for a minute or two, and the outer skins very quickly go soft, and you end up with them looking like this. You can see the skins are already coming off of these. It's done half the work for you. So you just rub off that outer layer. You might have to rinse your fingers a couple of times. The skins do stick to your fingers sometimes. Now that is actually, I will probably remove that layer as well. I'm just going to take the bottom off. So that's the bit there with the root piece on. Don't want that. And then just here, peel that other layer back, and you end up with a nice pickled onion, or a nice shallot, I should say. That little brown tip I'm going to cut off. I'm hoping they're a bit slippery at this point, guys. I'm just going to, nice and sharp. And that now is lovely and clean and ideal to go in my jars with my vinegar. And that's what you want to achieve. You just want to rub all these skins off and end up with some nice clean white greenish shallots ready for pickling. Well, that's the hard part done, guys, is the cleaning and the peeling, topping and tailing. I've done all that. I now have a nice bowl of onions waiting for the next stage. Now what I'm going to do with these now is they're not going straight in the jar. I've got some salt, and the idea now is to put salt on these. Just going to sprinkle some in. Toss them around a bit more salt, toss them around a bit, and a bit more salt. Now this is actually a fine sea salt. I rarely use table salt, we prefer sea salt. We've got coarse grain and fine. This is the fine one. Now those are salted. And I'm going to put those to one side for a good few hours. You want to leave them for 2 or 3 hours, or preferably overnight. If you cover them with cling film or something similar, pop them in the fridge and leave them till the next day. If you're in a hurry and you want to get them done on the same day, you want to give them a good few hours with the salt on. And that sort of extracts all the juices and moisture and so on and so forth, and tends to dry them a bit to make them a little bit crispy when you actually come to pickle them. So, in a bowl, salt, covered, and put them to one side. at least until the next day, I would say. A good few hours or overnight if you can. Well, for you guys, it's been a few seconds. For me, it's 24 hours later and I've been to work for a shift. So this is the next day. The pickled onions, or rather the shallots with the salt on, have been in the fridge overnight. And what I've been doing is periodically giving them a little bit of a shake around and a move about in there. So several times yesterday before we went to bed last night, this morning before I went to work, and again when I came home. So these now need to be rinsed. So that's the next stage. I'm going to tip these into a colander and rinse them. Leave them on the side to drip dry. You want them fairly dry afterwards before they go in the jars. Now I'm sterilising my jars at the moment. I'll talk about that in just a second. And whilst these are drip drying, we need to prepare the vinegar. I touched on a few of the ingredients earlier on in the video. I will now take you through exactly what I do to prepare the vinegar for these onions. That's the onions rinsed. I've got my jars and indeed my jam funnel, chutney funnel here, soaking in a little bit of, well, it's hot water and a little bit of my sterilizer from my brew kit. Sometimes there's alternatives. You can put them in the dishwasher, clean your jars that way. You can put them in the oven and bake them and sterilize them that way. You can use boiling water and fill each jar with boiling water momentarily. Tip that out, put your onions in. And on this occasion, I've put all my jars in the sink with some hot water and a little bit of my sterilizer that I use for sterilizing my brewing kit from when I'm making my beer and wine. So they're sitting there sterilizing. The onions are all rinsed. I now need to start prepping my vinegar. I've already mentioned some of the ingredients that you need for this. This is everything including equipment that I use now to prepare the vinegar before putting it onto the onions in the jars. You will need a decent saucepan. This one's quite a heavy base pan. It's a stainless steel, polished steel pan. And that's handy, and you need to make sure your saucepan, of course, is large enough to contain everything you're going to put in it. So a decent saucepan, and I've got 800 mils of pickling vinegar. This has been pre-seasoned by the company that manufactured it, but I'm going to be adding a few more ingredients to this just to spice it up a bit for my pickled onions. I've got about 800 ml of pickling vinegar there, and that equates to 1¼ pints for the benefit of those using imperial measurements. So 800 mils or 1¼ pints of the vinegar. I've got 120 grams of granulated sugar, ordinary household granulated sugar. I suppose you could experiment a little bit with different sugars, demerara sugar, brown sugars and things, but I've always used just the bog standard, ordinary granulated household sugar. So there's 120 grams of that, which equates approximately to 4 ounces. 4 ounces of sugar. Now, I've got a few dried chilies. I bought this bag of dried chilies. They're not particularly large. If I can open the packet, I'll give you an idea of the size of these guys. Tip some out in my hand so you can have a look and see. As you can see, they're not huge, but these are very useful for adding a bit of a kick and a bit of a flavour to this vinegar. So you're going to need a handful. Well, I say a handful. I'm probably going to use I don't know, probably half a dozen, 8 of these, maybe 10 if I'm feeling adventurous, but just a few of those to go in. In addition to the chilies, we've got some black peppercorns. I'll probably use about a tablespoon. I've got my trusty spoon here. I use this for all sorts of things, cooking and preparation in the kitchen. About a spoonful, like that, dessert spoonful of black peppercorns. What else have we got? A couple of teaspoons of mustard seeds, or maybe 1 dessert spoon. The white, or whatever, yellow, it's called yellow mustard seed. Okay, so we've got some mustard seeds there. Also, probably about a teaspoon or so of the whole coriander seeds. So I've got a jar full here. I use them in all sorts of Indian cooking, but they're ideal to add an extra bit of flavour to this pickling vinegar, to add a bit of flavour to your pickled onions. So a few coriander seeds as well. And finally, I've got 4 freshly picked bay leaves from our bay tree in the garden. So 4 nice bays there. Now, when I use my bay leaves, guys, this is a little tip I was given by a chef a long time ago. But when you use your bay leaf, rather than just put it in your dish, your menu, recipe, whatever you're cooking and preparing, before you put it in, it's a good idea just to fold it and roll it like that, and then flex it backwards and forwards a couple of times, and that breaks up all the veins in the leaf and releases all the oils and all the flavours. Now, suddenly, standing back here, I can smell that bay leaf. Honestly, it makes such a difference. The aroma from that will now be released into the vinegar that we're going to prepare. So we'll take it to the stove and I'll show you how we go about that preparation. Right, well, here we go. First thing we do is put the vinegar in the pan. I would normally have the extractor working when I'm preparing things on the stove, guys, but it makes such a noise that the microphone picks that up and you can't hear me talk very well, so I'm leaving it off for the time being. Now, you put your vinegar in the pan, turn on your heat, and the idea now is to bring this to a simmer. So we've got the heat on fairly high and we're going to gradually bring that to a simmer. And we're going to add the 120 grams of sugar to this. Sticking in the bottom of the plate, just make sure we get everything out. There we go. We'll give that a little stir. And the idea now is to get this sugar to dissolve into the vinegar. This is just coming to the boil. So what I need to do now is to add my chilies. Now, I think I said a half a dozen or so. I think that's probably too many here. I've got about a dozen of those little red chilies, guys. I'm going to be adding those to that vinegar. I've got a couple left on the counter. I'm going to throw those in as well for good measure. There we go. So I've got about a dozen of those little red chilies thrown in there. Just stir those in a bit. Next, we need to add the peppercorns, and I want about a teaspoon of these. Don't need a huge quantity, but there you go, something like that is fine. Just drop those in there. I might add a couple more. It's entirely up to you guys, just to give it that flavour. And also, when you put the vinegar in the jars, you want all these little bits and pieces in the jars as well, because as they're left to mature on your shelf or in your cupboard over the next few weeks or so, all those flavours will dissipate into the vinegar. Mustard seeds. What did I say I needed on mustard seeds? Couple of teaspoons or 1 tablespoon. So I got my spoon. I'm going to decant some of these onto there. That's a generous amount. I think that's probably enough on this occasion. I'll throw those in, mix everything together. That's your mustard seeds in there, guys. You can see it's boiling quite well now. About a tablespoon of coriander seeds. Now, of course, if there are any of these flavours you don't particularly like, or maybe even you're allergic to, I don't know. So many allergies these days. But whatever you don't like or don't want, just omit. But I do find that this combination is pretty good in the vinegar for your onions. Tablespoon, rather a dessert spoon, similar, of the coriander seeds there, guys. I'm putting those in. And finally, my bay leaves. Now I did show you, roll it up, give it a squidge, open it up, pop it in. I'm going to do the same with the others. I'm going to roll them up, give it a squidge, pop it in there, and again, give it a squidge, pop it in there, and the 4th one. And these, as I said, were freshly picked from the bay in our garden. So that's it. We now need to simmer this for about 5 to 10 minutes or so. And once I've done that, I will turn off the heat and just leave it standing to cool a bit. And during that cooling process, all those flavours and aromas will all gather together in this liquid. Now things are getting exciting because I've rinsed my jars. They're all sterile, they're all clean. The onions have dried off as best I can get them. I've let them drain. I kept shaking them around to get as much of the moisture off of those as possible. I'm now going to see how many jars I fill with these onions. You want to get a mixture. I know I've got some as big as this and I've got some as small as this. So I try and mix them up a bit in these jars and get a few large and a few small in each. So you just spread them out. See how you go. Now I don't know if I'm going to fill all of these jars. We'll see how it goes. But these 3 at the front I'm going to concentrate on first. Just to see. I wasn't sure how many jars I would need, to be perfectly honest. But looks like the 3 will be a good measure. Whoops. The jars that are left over, they're all nice and clean and sterile. We can use those for our beetroot, and Cheryl has been picking and pickling beetroot, and that's about full, that one, guys. So looks like we're pretty good. 3 good jarfuls would be about right, I think. I'll take 1 large one and pop it in there, even these out a bit. Hey, that'll be fine, man. 1 of those over there. There we go. I hope you can see that, guys. I've got them all filled like so. So these 3 aren't going to be used. I wasn't concerned. I did know I had more jars than I needed. I just wasn't too certain how far these onions were going to go in terms of filling jars. These jars are a reasonable size. So onions are in, shake them down, and all we need to do now is add some vinegar. I'm going to use my stainless steel funnel. It's got a wide hole in here, ideal for jams and chutneys and all manner of applications. I like to use it for this. You can direct the vinegar in here down into the jar, and when all the bits and pieces are going in, they also flow through and don't clog the hole at the bottom. Now this vinegar is still quite warm, guys. I'm gonna carefully pour some into that jar till we're just about to the neck of the jar. I'm hoping I've got enough here. And you've got some peppercorns and the mustard seeds and the coriander and the chilies. all floating out. The bay leaves haven't come out yet. I'll pop those in a minute. I've just got enough vinegar for these 3 jars. Look guys, absolutely brilliant. Now if you haven't quite got enough vinegar, you can always top it up with a little bit from the jar, from the bottle, a little bit more vinegar just to top that up to make sure they're covered. Now the bay leaves, just going to pop those in there. One in that one, one in that one. Just pushing them down on the side, guys. Now I'm not going to waste those chilies. There's a few chilies and bits left in here. I'm just using my fingers. You can use your spoon, out you like, just to get those bits in there. These are going to be amazing pickled onions. You're going to love them, guys. You really are. Plenty of bits. Don't have to use it all. I'm using most. Just to make sure we've got all of those flavours in there. Just tapping it down with a spoon. Make sure that bay leaf sits down in there. All in all, we're looking pretty good. Fantastic. This one's ready. I can put the lid on. Now what will happen is, as this vinegar, put it on really tight as well guys, as this vinegar now cools down in here, give it a shake around, get everything mixed up. As that cools down, it will suck that lid down in and seal the jar tight. That's just what you want. The lids will get sucked in, just like the ones in the shops, guys. This one's okay. I can put the lid on that one. Mix it all up a bit. That's another one. Yep, I'm happy with this one. In fact, I might top that one up with a bit more vinegar before I put the lid on. But to all intents and purposes, we now have 3 lovely jars of pickled onions. We'll be looking forward to having these during the winter months with a bit of supper. I like them with a bit of bread and cheese, or even with a little bit of salad, some cold meats, things of that nature. I know it's been a lengthy video, but sometimes these preparation videos, and in particular the cooking videos and so on, in order to get all the information across and show you guys every step of the process, I do try and be thorough. I do try to give you as much information as possible and explain things in a way that anybody can take it on board and do it themselves. So if you've managed to watch to the end of my video today, thank you so much and well done. Go and get yourself a cup of tea, go and get your shallots in and make your own pickled onions. Now, I've got mine in jars like these. You can put them in smaller jars, larger jars if you like. As I said earlier in the video, my father used to make big sweetie jars like you used to get in the corner shop, the big jars. He used to fill those with pickled onions. My goodness. Once they're done like this, if you want, you can label them. You could use fancy jars, put labels on, give them to your family and friends as gifts, particularly at Christmas time. Now this lid hasn't gone in yet. It's still quite warm. That will suck in as it cools down. Now I'm going to put these away. These will go in my store cupboard in the other area of my kitchen, and I will probably leave these for a good month and a half. You want to leave them for about 6 to 8 weeks before you attempt eating them. That way you give all the flavours chances to come out, the chilies to do their thing and give them a bit of a kick. They're much better if you leave them. If you try and eat them too soon, they're not particularly good. You want to leave them until all that flavour soaks into the onions. So there we go, guys. AJ's pickled onions. There are lots of other recipes out there. You can go on YouTube, go on Google. I'm sure you can find loads of recipes in your cookbooks and wherever. Loads of recipes. Just find the one that suits you. This is my take on many recipes. I find this is a good recipe, works for me. These onions will be lovely. Guys, thank you for sticking around. A big thank you to all of my new subscribers. I am creeping up a few. I could do with lots more, guys. If you're new here and you like what we're doing, please hit the subscribe button in the corner, or wherever else on your screen is the ability to subscribe. Please hit that. Give us a thumbs up. Ring the bell in order to get all the notifications for up and coming videos. And more importantly, come back and see us again. Tell your friends about us. And go back and look at all my other videos. You'll see a year ago how I might have been doing something similar. And there's some humour in there, a bit of banter, a few disappointments, all sorts of things in there. But at the end of the day, the life's good. Guys, take care of yourselves. You be safe, be happy, and we'll see you next time in the Life's Good. Bye-bye.